Hey guys, what's up? It's Jenna. Welcome to Belin Youth Group at Home Edition. I am so glad you are joining us. If you are wondering why I still look pregnant and it is late June, it is because we have pre-recorded these. We are so close to getting ready to welcome our new baby Bush, but by this time, hopefully, Tony, myself, and Caden will be welcoming our new little family addition. But I am still so glad to be able to be with you doing youth group at home. And so we're going to continue our series called Popular, and we've been talking a lot about influence and what that means. But I have a question for you. Have you ever seen like America's Funniest Home Videos, or some people like to watch those shows where people do like these races and they fall into pools of water and all that stuff and they like totally wipe out? Yeah, that's the show, Wipe Out. And they totally like mess up. I have such a hard time watching those shows because my heart just pains for them. But it can be very funny to watch America's Funniest Home Videos and those kinds of shows and see people totally wipe out, mess up. Ever be in a room of hundreds of people and the person on stage mess up and say the completely wrong thing in front of everybody, and it can be kind of funny. Or maybe you're like me and you've been in gym class and you've had that dodgeball hit your head and everyone sees it. Or maybe you're like me and you've been that person who came in a measure too early on a song, and so for the next 2 or 3 weeks, every time you go to practice that song, they say, "Hey, Jenna, not yet," before that measure even comes up. Or maybe you're like me and you were in 6th grade making some new friends, and you'd bring a can of soda to lunch, and that one time you were drinking it and laughing so hard that you spit it everywhere. And so oftentimes it's a conversation of, "Hey, don't make Jenna laugh because she'll spit soda everywhere." Well, that might happen. Or maybe you're like me and there's that whole thing. I'm originally from Jersey, and so I didn't grow up pumping gas. They do that for you. And so when I went away from college, somebody had to teach me how to pump gas. But I went to this other gas station with some middle schoolers, and I could not figure out that you had to take off the little nozzle and then lift the pump. And then all summer it was a thing, right? Like, you ever have that kind of thing follow you? You make one mistake, you can't figure one thing out, and all of a sudden you're known for it. It's like, "Oh, Jenna, do you need help going to get gas?" It's like, "No, I think I got it now." Like, it is really easy. I can see that was so funny, right? So sometimes these kinds of things happen and they just kind of start encompassing who you are, and that mistake you made becomes such a part of who your identity seems to be. And it starts to shape people's opinions of you. And in a way, influence can work the same way. We've been talking about influence. When I think about influence, I think about, that ability that if I start yawning right now, that it might be tempting you to yawn, because that is the power of influence. Influence is this ability to affect somebody, to impact things that influence their behavior or thoughts or choices. While we have a tendency to believe that something like influence is reserved for the people who are known or popular or kind of a big deal, the reality is we all have the potential to influence other people, for better or for worse. And because of that, we all have the same potential to lose influence. And maybe you know somebody right now who is living that out exactly. Like, they used to be a completely reputable person and all their friends trusted them, but now they told that one lie, or they gossiped, and now nobody trusts them. Or maybe they made a bad decision or started getting into trouble, and now they've totally lost their influence. Or maybe because it's happened to you. You were the kid who could make every shot at basketball, and now no one will pass you the ball, or you're the kid who got all straight A's, or you're the kid who was always there at youth group and known as this youth group kid, but you made one bad decision. Maybe it was a very bad decision, and now it's like your entire reputation has completely shifted and changed, and you feel as though your ability to influence has completely been shifted. Because the reality is, if you talk behind people's backs very, very often, you're not going to be known as a trustworthy person. The more we do these kinds of behaviors, the more likely we lose our effect to influence people for good. But this all sounds like a big bummer, and everyone makes mistakes. So what happens when we do make mistakes? Is there a way out of it? And I want to share with you today that there is a way to regain that influence for good that you may have thought was gone forever. And yes, I've seen it happen in my own life, but I've also seen it happen displayed throughout the Bible multiple times. But I want to share with you today about a guy named Peter. And Peter, we talked about a little last week, was awesome. But Peter did not always make the best decisions. You see, Peter was one of Jesus' most trusted friend, maybe his most trusted friend. He was the guy Jesus pegged to help lead the church and start everyone in the Christian way. And he was this incredible, like when we think about Peter and when people talk about Peter today, he is known as a cornerstone of the church, this big person who's super important. But guess what? Peter, he was not always that guy. Like sometimes he was angry, made bad decisions, and sometimes he even wasn't the best friend. So we're going to look at a story that comes from Luke today, and when we're picking up at this story, there is Jesus. And this is like the beginning of the end for Jesus, or so we thought, because, well, he's Jesus. But it's starting to reach that time when Jesus is about to be arrested. And people are looking like this is the beginning of the end for him. And his friends, the people who followed him, his disciples, the people who were closest to them, are starting to look around and feel like this could be the beginning of the end for me. And that's a scary place to be. And I don't really judge Peter for that, but there he is. He's in this place where things are looking very rough. And Jesus gets arrested and taken off. And some people come to Peter, and this is the story. So Jesus is taken away, and Peter kind of follows to kind of see where they're taking Jesus. But Peter is afraid. And so he kind of tries to hide, and he tries to hide himself amongst the crowd. And this is the story that unfolds in the book of Luke. A servant's girl saw him, Peter, seated there in the firelight. She looked closely at him and said this man was with him, but he denied it. Woman, I don't know him, he said. Do you catch that, what Peter did there? One of the most trusted friends, loyal followers, and closest servants of Jesus just straight up lied about even knowing him. He denied knowing Jesus at all. This is like your best friend, like the person you do everything with, like all of a sudden pretending that you didn't even know that they existed. Like you might as well pretend that you don't know your sibling exists. Like this is somebody super close to you, and now you're saying, I don't even know the guy. This is not the way I would think one of the most prominent church leaders lived during Jesus's worst hours, hardest hours, right? But this is where Peter is. And so if you think this is bad, which it is, the story goes from bad to worse, because as the story in Luke unfolds, Peter denies knowing Jesus 2 more times. 3 times Peter denies knowing Jesus at all. If you're like me, you think that at this point Peter has lost any potential that he has ever to be a leader in the Christian way, right? I mean, that's certainly what I would think. But Jesus doesn't allow our mistakes to be the end all be all for us. Actually, Jesus sees our sins and our mistakes, and he uses us anyway. You see, Peter messed up. He certainly did. But Jesus is way bigger than any mistake we can make. Jesus doesn't allow our mistakes to end our story. You see, Jesus doesn't look at our mistakes the same way we do. Thank goodness. You see, Jesus did die. He rose again. And when he rose again, he came back to meet with Peter. And the story for Peter continues when Jesus comes and meets with his disciples after he rose from the dead. We find this account in the book of John. When they had finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" "Yes, Lord," he said. "You know that I love you." Jesus said, "Feed my lambs." With his very first question, Jesus was giving Peter a chance to change the story, to right the wrong, to be more than his mistakes, to gain back his influence. And this time, Peter got it right. 3 times Jesus asked Peter if he loved him, and 3 times Peter affirmed it. You see, Jesus then, his response, "Feed my sheep." Feed my sheep. Well, this is Caden's lamb, but this is, not exactly what Jesus had in mind. That would kind of be weird, right? Like, we don't really do the whole shepherd thing anymore. But what he is saying is, feed my sheep, influence my people, love my people, take care of them, lead them in the ways that I have taught you. Restore your influence. And you see, that's the amazing thing about Jesus, is he does not allow our mistakes to be the end of our story. Jesus doesn't end it there. You see, Jesus saw Peter as so much more than his mistakes. And here's the great thing. That's how Jesus sees us too. Just like Peter, we are so much more than our mistakes. And no matter what you've done, step by step, you have the ability to regain that influence with the power of Jesus. Jesus doesn't allow our mistakes to be the end of our story. Just like Peter, you can receive grace and forgiveness. How your story has gone before doesn't have to be the way it goes in the future. You can take a step toward Jesus and a step to regaining some of the influence you feel like you lost. You can regain some of the influence you feel like you have lost. So I want you to start with these 3 things. So first, ask yourself, what is one reason why you may be losing your influence? What may be causing you to lose your influence? Take a minute to think about what choices you might be making, big or small, that are impacting your ability to influence others for good. Is it the person you're dating? Is it the things you're posting on social media? Is it the way you're gossiping about your friends? Is it that party you had? Is it the way that you're starting to be known to cheat on tests? Maybe it's that you're being known for stealing. What is it that is causing you to lose influence? Second, confess it to God. Be honest with God about it. Ask him to come alongside you and help you to overcome that. Take one small step toward gaining back the influence you think may be lost. Maybe it means apologizing to someone you've wronged. Maybe it means putting up boundaries in relationships or friendships. Maybe it means helping somebody that you've wronged, or talking differently about the people around you. So take one small step this week in the right direction, and then take another. Remember, Jesus doesn't allow our mistakes to be the end of our story. So what's one thing in your life that may be causing you to lose influence? Caden. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for joining us for Belin Youth Group at Home Edition. I will see you real soon. Yeah. Say bye-bye. Bye-bye.